I call to order the meeting of the Gladstone Planning Commission for Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. It's 6:30 p.m. We will, well, I'll go through the agenda, and I do have one item I'd like to add to the agenda, but we have our consent agenda, which consists just of the approval of meeting minutes from the last meeting. Then on our regular agenda, we will take a look at the monthly planning report from the planner. I would like to add a item 2.5 in there that I'm just going to, I'll just call it issues related to the ice storm. And then we'll look at a little bit of in-service education here on the difference between legislative and quasi-judicial public hearings. And then we'll have some discussion of our work plan, including there's some resource items that we've added to the agenda tonight related to accessory dwelling units. We have 2 new members joining us tonight, so we will have the oath of office for Andrew and Tom. And then we will need to elect officers to proceed before we proceed to the rest of the agenda. So Tammy, will you call the roll for the continuing members?
Commissioner Langston.
Present.
Commissioner Natalie Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Poole.
I'm present.
Commissioner Pat Smith.
Here.
Chair Milch.
Present. We can see the flag. We'll try to do a flag salute tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Tammy, I assume, well, which Tammy is going to do the honors tonight? Tammy Bannock, are you going to swear in our new members?
That was the plan, unless the mayor wants to do that.
No, I'm just going to sit here and smile because we have all these great people. So go for it.
Okay, both our new commissioners hopefully have a copy of the oath in front of them. I will start off with Andrew Labonte.
You.
So Andrew, if you want to raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Sure thing.
I state your name.
I, Andrew Labonte,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Oregon. Sorry.
fine, thank you. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Oregon
And the Charter and Municipal Code of the City of Gladstone.
and the Charter and Municipal Code of the City of Gladstone,
And that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
perform the duties of Planning Commissioner
perform the duties of Planning Commissioner
for the City of Gladstone, Oregon during my entire term, so help me God.
for the city of the Planning Commissioner for the City of Gladstone, Oregon during my entire term, so help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Mr. Mercero, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, please raise your right hand.
I think that's my right hand.
Yes, it is. Okay, I state your name.
I, Thomas Mercero,
Do
solemnly
solemnly
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon
and the Charter and Municipal Code of the City of Gladstone,
and the Charter and Municipal Code of the City of Gladstone,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
perform the duties of Planning Commissioner
perform the duties of Planning Commissioner
for the City of Gladstone, Oregon during my entire term, so help me God.
for the City of Gladstone, Oregon during my entire term. So help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now
Very
I
good.
believe, oh, sorry,
Oh,
I
go
was,
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I think we now do the election of the chair and the vice chair.
That's right.
And I think we're open for nominations for the election of a chair. Is there a nomination for chair?
Yes, I would like to nominate Michael Milch to continue as our chairman.
Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
I'd like to nominate Les Poole.
I'll second that.
Okay, hold on for just a moment. Okay, so we are going to go through, first off, the motion for Michael Milch. So I'm going to do a roll call on Michael Milch, and then we will go on to the motion for Les Poole. So this is for Michael Milch for chair, Commissioner Langston,
Yes.
Commissioner Natalie Smith,
No.
Commissioner Labonte,
Yes.
Commissioner Poole,
No.
Commissioner Mercero,
No.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Yes,
Commissioner Milch.
Yes.
Now we'll go on to the motion for Les Poole. Commissioner Langston,
No.
Commissioner Natalie Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Labonte,
No.
Commissioner Poole,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercero,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
no,
Commissioner Milch.
No.
It appears that the election of the chair is going to be Michael Milch. We will now do the election of the vice chair. Do you want to take that over now, Chair Milch?
Okay, I will entertain a nomination for vice chair of the planning commission.
I would like to nominate Andrell Langston.
I would second that.
Are there other nominations?
Excuse me.
Commissioner Langston, are you willing to serve as vice chair?
Yes, I would.
All right. All right, Tammy, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Langston,
Yes.
Commissioner Natalie Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Labonte,
Yes.
Commissioner Poole,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercero,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Yes,
Chair Milch.
Yes.
Congratulations.
All right. Since this is the first meeting for two of our members, at least on this term, I thought we could begin with just some initial introductions so that we all know each other a little better. And I will go in order, starting with Commissioner Langston. So just say a little bit about yourself, maybe what you do, your interest in planning, and so that Andrew primarily will get to know us a little better.
Will do.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrew Langston, live on 190 West Jersey. My career, I work for a general contracting firm, mostly do multifamily housing and mixed use buildings. And I've been on the Planning Commission for 3 years now. Seems like yesterday. And I enjoy it. I like help putting together a vision for our community and upholding, our ordinances, and I just enjoy being part of the community.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Natalie Smith.
Hi, Andrew. I'm in my second term as a planning commissioner. I've enjoyed learning so much about our community and about planning. And I also have served on the library board and the library task force. But I really do enjoy my time on the Planning Commission because it's wonderful to be able to do the design reviews, because what we work towards is what's going to benefit our community and the citizens of Gladstone. And I just really enjoy doing it. And welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I don't know what order the people are going to be seated, but I will call on Andrew next.
Hey, okay, well, I'm Andrew Labonte, the newest member to the commission here. I've worked in traffic safety education for 21 years now. It's kind of my focus is helping keep people safe behind the wheel. I live on Oakfield Ave. I've got 2 young children. I've lived here in Gladstone for 6 years now. Absolutely love the community, and am eager and very excited to be part of the board. It kind of echoes some of the things I've heard so far to, certainly be part of the community and to, help mold the city into, the future of Gladstone, I guess you could say. But I'm very excited to be here, and thank you so much for your encouragement.
Commissioner Les Poole.
Hey, good evening. I've been on the Planning Commission 7 years, but I've been around land use and property for most of my life. So I have a background actually in the material handling world and transportation and logistics. And at one point spent many, many years in contracting, HVAC and air purification and you name it. So got a good background and have lived in Gladstone for 8 years, but been in Clackamas County for almost 30. So as a forklift safety instructor and someone that is real big on transportation, you and I will probably do well together. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Mercereau.
Well, I started out at the Planning Commission a few years ago. After the fire department saved my life, I decided to do something for the city to help pay them back. And so I ended up on the Planning Commission. And I was on the Planning Commission from 2007, I believe, until 2011, when I became a counselor. I think I'm well suited for the Planning Commission because of my past background in engineering and such. So I would just like to see the Planning Commission work as a team to agree and disagree as it may be, and everybody work out to and work up to making the best decision for all.
Thank you. And Commissioner Pat Smith.
Hi, Andrew. Welcome. Hope you feel as good about this at this time next year as you do tonight. I'm retired from a lengthy career in many functions of the grocery business. I've lived in Gladstone for 39 years. I spent a number of years at United Grocers on Lake Road. My interest in the Planning Commission is it's rewarding to be a part of doing something positive for our community. And I'm kidding about it. This is a good group of people to work with. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Me too.
And Andrew, I'm Michael Milch. I've lived in Gladstone with my family for about 6 years, and I have extended family that's lived here a little longer than I have. They're the reason we moved here. In the past, I've had a couple of different careers. I was in religious education for about 15 years and then became a pension actuary and retired from that about, 13 years ago, I guess. When we moved to Oregon to be with family, I grew up in Southern California, so I've seen a lot of examples of what really bad planning looks like in terms of transportation and housing and everything else. And I think that state is finally beginning to get its act together. But when I moved to Gladstone, getting involved locally interested me. And it's a small enough community where I felt like I could make a difference. And so I've enjoyed being involved in a variety of capacities, and Planning Commission has been very rewarding. It's very challenging, involves a lot of homework and preparation, but as others have said, you really do see that you're making a difference in the community and the life of the community. So it's an important job to have, and we're glad you're on board. And Commissioner Mercero, we're glad you're on board as well.
Thank you.
All right, let's move ahead to the consent agenda.
Michael,
Yes, Natalie?
Mayor Stemple wanted to say something.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mayor. You unmute yourself and
Well, since you're doing introductions, I thought this was probably the appropriate time to let you guys know that I am your liaison. I spent 14 years on Planning Commission, so it's absolutely what I'm passionate about. So I envy all of you for doing this. It's a wonderful experience. It's a great group of people, and you make things that impact people directly, and you can actually see it, which makes all the difference in the world. But I wanted to let you know my intent as your liaison is not to sit on every meeting. I'm here if you guys have questions, concerns, if you need training, if you need any kind of reference materials, anything that you need to make your job easier, better, more thorough, let me know and we will make it happen. I'd love to sit in on the meetings because again, I love planning, but because of what you guys do, that's not appropriate. But I'm completely available for you guys anytime you need me.
well, and I will add to that because we're going to talk about it a little later on tonight. I know that some of the matters that we discussed, particularly the quasi-judicial hearings, are appealable to the elected officials, in this case, the city council. And for that reason, it might not be appropriate for a council member to be in attendance or a mayor to hear those issues as we discuss them, because they want to hear them with fresh ears if it becomes appealable to them. But for legislative matters and just kind of general discussion of issues related to housing, which is very important right now, and transportation, we would be happy to have you in attendance. There's no concern about ex parte communication on legislative matters and those general discussions. And for you to be informed through actual presence at the meetings would be just great for us. So you're welcome here anytime, and you will get plenty of notice if it is a land use hearing where it would not be appropriate for you to attend until the appeal period has elapsed, and then you can watch the video and get informed on what happened. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Chair Milch, may I interject one more thing?
Sure.
I went and looked at my email from the city today, and I believe there was, and I want to clarify this, John Southgate is going to be doing some training via Zoom. Is that correct this Saturday, or is it another Saturday?
John Morgan, or
John Morgan, sorry.
yes. And I don't think the date has been set. I know that the IT department was doing something with email, so you may not have access to it right now, but I think there's a doodle poll to give us an option of a date to attend a training. John has done a great job with this before. I went to a training he did for counselors and commissioners about 4 years ago. He also helped to lead the strategic planning session for the city council. And he brings experience from a variety of cities all across Oregon. And that's really a helpful resource to have. And so if you can respond to that doodle poll so we can set a date, we'll have an opportunity to do what we couldn't do last year in the midst of COVID. And that's to have a good training for all the commissioners and counselors together. It probably will be Zoom,
in my email.
It'll be a virtual training. Yes, I should say. So
I didn't see anything in my inbox regarding that.
You haven't seen it yet. Okay, I think it came from Tammy. Did you send that, or was that from Jackie Betts?
That either came from Jackie or Haley Kratz.
It
Okay,
came from Jackie yesterday.
And if you haven't received it, let me know and we'll make sure and get it to you.
Yeah, I'm not
Thank you.
seeing anything, but I also have I can see that my email is not connected for some reason. So I'll get that connected and see if it comes through.
okay. As I said, the IT department is doing something to update the email system, and they indicated there would be some outages. So you may not just have looked at it since that came in, and it'll be back in your box when everything's up
And
and
Chair
running.
Milch, thank you for explaining that because I saw part of the email message and then all of a sudden it went away and I didn't
Oh.
have any connection. So that's
Okay.
why I was wanting to know some information on it because I couldn't see the entirety of it.
Very good. All right. I hope
Thank
that's
you.
clear. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda, which has one item, the approval of the minutes of our January 19th meeting. We did not meet in February, but we met in January. Joy, did you have, I see your hand up, or I saw it up. Did you have a comment before we get to that?
Well, I wanted to know if you wanted me to introduce myself.
Yeah, well, I was going to have you do that when you get to your report, but
Okay.
okay,
I'll
we'll do
wait.
that then. All right. Okay. Do I hear, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of our January meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the January minutes.
I'll second.
All right. It was moved by Les Poole and seconded by Natalie Smith to approve the minutes of the January 19th, 2021 meeting. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I believe the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. And we always start our regular agenda with a report from our contract city planner who works for the county of Clackamas. And Joy, this would be a good time for you to introduce yourself to the Planning Commission members, our newest member at least, and then you can present your report.
Well, thank you. I'm Joy Fields. As Chair Milch said, I work for Clackamas County and I provide current planning services for the city of Gladstone. I am a senior planner. I've been in the planning field for over 10 years now. And so I welcome the chance to work closely with a planning commission. And you usually see me during planning commission meetings where you are holding quasi-judicial hearings around land use matters. I craft the staff reports to look at applications and how they match up with the code and provide background information for the planning commission. Tammy, are you going to be sharing your screen?
No, let me make you a co-host for you to be able to share your screen.
Okay. Do you know what page of the Planning Commission packet the monthly report starts on?
On 2-1.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Without a February Planning Commission meeting, we are looking back to January to look at the efforts that have taken place in the planning office for Gladstone. As the image of Gladstone has changed, I have tried to reflect that in the monthly reports. So you will have noticed that the colors have changed to try to match the colors of Gladstone's new logo. If you have any feedback, please let me know. So the planning services are provided in a multiple of ways, one of which is at the counter in the lobby of the public service building, where people come to get building permits and talk to different departments. And when they come to that lobby, they have access to a planner as well as the building department for Clackamas County, which provides building services for Gladstone as well. So the service counter contacts are those people that actually come physically into the office. I am not always on public service at the counter, but when anyone speaks to someone about Gladstone, it shows up here on service counter contacts. The primary way of communication right now with COVID-19 is through phone and email. And so we get quite a few phone calls and emails. In January, there were 52 that received responses. Building permits with land use review. Anytime there's a building permit, we look at it to make sure that the use is allowed and that the setbacks are met for the underlying zoning district. And there was one building permit with land use review in January. Pre-application conferences are a requirement for many of the land use applications in Gladstone. Any conditional use permits, design review, or variances require a pre-application conference. And one was held in January for an application you will likely see next month. Administrative decisions are those that city administrator or their designee reviews. And so an administrative decision is a land use permit that is not subjective, has clear and objective standards that staff can review. And there is one administrative permit. The City of Gladstone Planning Commission received the draft housing zoning and community engagement strategy at their meeting. And then there was a ZPAC, which is the pre-application conference, and it was for a new building. This is 2020. This is a typo, Tammy. The 2021 pre-application conference was for the variance application. So I apologize for having the 2020 data in here. The administrative permit also says 2020. However, it came in at the end of 2020. And so while that number does say 2020, it was a land use application from 2020. And that was the property line adjustment that the Planning Commission saw for the rezoning of 1.04 acres from the church property to the Webster Ridge apartment complex. So the next step for that project will be a design review application that you all will hear. I do not have a land use application for that yet. So they came in for a property line adjustment. The building permit that was reviewed was for the old nursing home that was approved through a conditional use permit for housing for older adults on Webster Ridge. They modified their plans to meet the design standards for the City of Gladstone, which is part of the special conditions that were applied to that land use permit, required that they meet with the City Public Works Department and meet the design standards for stormwater, sewer. So none of the plans related to use have changed, and the building footprint has not changed, but some of the plans were changed to address stormwater or sewer or sidewalks. And so that is the building permit to facilitate the remodeling of that structure that you all looked at in the conditional use application. The Gladstone housing needs analysis was approved by City Council. And so the housing needs analysis is complete. Are there any questions about January? Okay. In February, there were no counter contacts. There were 74 phone calls or emails, and there were 5 building permits that required land use review. There was 1 pre-application conference and 1 administrative decision. The Planning Commission meeting was canceled. The City Council received the housing needs analysis and also received the community engagement strategy. The administrative permit that was reviewed and approved was assigned for the fire department. The building permits included cell tower maintenance, roof replacements, an addition, a remodel, and a deck replacement, or front and back deck replacements. Are there any questions on either of those?
No, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Joy. I will entertain a motion for acceptance of the planners' reports for January and February.
I'll make a motion that we accept January, February planning report.
I second that.
All right, it was moved by Commissioner Langston, seconded by Commissioner Natalie Smith to approve the planners' reports for January and February. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. All right, I believe the ayes have it, so the reports are accepted. Now, I asked to add an item 2.5 in here, and this is something where, Joy, you might be able to provide a little bit of a resource for us. I was calling it ice storm issues, I guess. First of all, I want to say a word of thanks to Pat Smith and his friend Ralph Mateel and others who last year started a group called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. It was originally, I think, conceived as a way of helping people who maybe were getting in, a little bit in trouble with code enforcement on issues related to their property, like overgrown lawn or something like that, but maybe who didn't have the resources or the physical ability to do some of that work themselves to get into compliance. And I understand from reading social media that during the ice storm, this group got out and really helped a lot of citizens in the community with some of the debris removal and other issues. So Pat, and through us to your friend Ralph and all the others who participated in that, I just want to say thank you for exemplifying the values of Gladstone of helping one another and really working together as a community.
If I could, Chairman Milch, Ralph, I helped Ralph one afternoon, but Ralph and a man named Dieter Samus worked for a week. They got tired of seeing him down in Meldrum. They were down there 3 and 4 times a day with trailer loads. And I'm unsure of which of our city councilors lent them a trailer to use, but I want to say it was Councilor Alexander, but I'm not positive.
I think so.
That was correct.
So there was a lot of people that pitched in and helped.
Well, I think that was great. And I wanted to start with that on a very positive note. Now, one of the things that back in October of 2019, the Planning Commission had a meeting scheduled and only 3 of the planning commissioners were able to attend. And so they didn't have an official meeting, but they did have some discussion among the 3 that were there. And Randy Rolette, who was the chair at that time, brought up an issue, a concern of his, which was about trees in the city of Gladstone. On behalf of his older brother, who has lived in this city for, I think, going on 60 years, he said his brother's always concerned when he sees trees being cut down. Sometimes they come down as a result of land being redeveloped. Sometimes, a property owner just decides that they don't want the tree, or the tree is sick and needs to come down. But during the ice storm, we saw real concrete examples of some of the impact, literally, that trees can have on a community. Randy's concern when he brought this up, Chair Rollette's concern when he brought this up at that meeting, was that we don't seem to have a lot of regulations in the city of Gladstone regarding removal of trees. I know that I've read that the city of Lake Oswego has some of the strictest regulations in the county. I know that we have family that live in Oregon City, and when they had some tree branches come down on their roof during the ice storm, they had a multi-page form that they had to fill out to get approval to prune and perhaps remove that tree. So, Joy, I wanted to ask you, what is the situation in Gladstone as far as trees? I know we have landscaping requirements for properties. Do you ever get applications? Do they come to you for tree removal, or are we a little bit behind on that compared to other cities?
There is no tree ordinance in Gladstone. And so if the landscape requirement of 20% for different land use application types specifically calls out trees or street trees. Street trees are a requirement for applications that require design review and are not located along McLaughlin. But for residential properties, there are no zoning requirements requiring trees. And there is no application for approving or monitoring tree removal. So similar to Clackamas County, trees are a private matter when it's on a residential property. Neighbors talk to neighbors about whose tree it is, and it is either pruned or removed, and they don't require land use approval. If the land use approval specifically talks about trees, including street trees, or specific trees in the 20% landscaping requirement, then any of those trees would have to be replaced if they come down.
Okay. And how long does that requirement to replace them come?
There's no expiration,
okay,
to my understanding.
All right. Okay, well, as many of you know, that falling trees and falling branches during the ice storm was one of the key issues that led to long-term power failure for some neighborhoods. And it just reminded me of that concern that former Chair Roulette had raised. I don't want to get into a huge discussion on it tonight, but I think it's important for us to be aware sometimes of the limitations of our own regulations and where perhaps we might need to look at things in the future. The other thing I wanted to bring up was as people found themselves without electricity for long periods of times of various lengths, residents began to appreciate some of what they had in terms of their own, how should I term it? Some of the amenities of their homes. In my case, we have a gas water heater. So we were able to take hot showers during the 12 days that we were without power, but we have an electric stove and oven. So we weren't able to cook with our own stuff. And I think most everybody who has a forced air heating system of one kind or another, whether it's gas or electric, requires electricity to operate the fans. And so there were a lot of people who were without that, but some people had gas fireplaces and were able to warm their homes, or wood burning fireplaces. I bring this up to say that, oh, and then I had some neighbors who had a gas stove so they could cook, but they had an electric water heater and they couldn't take warm showers. As I brought up earlier with, mentioning the neighbors helping neighbors, a lot of people stepped up and helped one another during this time. We had a neighbor that loaned us a propane camping stove so we could do some actual cooking. But what I'm wondering is, we may have people now who say, boy, it sure would be nice to have a gas cooktop in my home, or a gas fireplace added to my existing fireplace. Joy, since you handle building permits, what kinds of things require permits to add to a home? I'm putting you on the spot. I probably should have prepared you for this, but when we talk about ADUs, one of the things that people do to modify their home to make an additional dwelling unit would be to add some cooking equipment, appliances, a gas cooktop, for example, in an apartment, or a proposed ADU. Are they required to get a permit to do that? Or can you just have the Home Depot or somebody come out and install it in your basement, or whatever? So, Joy?
It is my understanding that there should be an electrical permit for installing a new stove. And that is based on electrical permits that I see when reviewing larger packets of permits for homes or commercial. And so, and from discussing it with the building permit staff, one of the ways they decommission a home is by removing the electrical or gas hookup for stoves. So stoves trigger special look at when looking at a building permit for a remodel. If there's a stove or there's what appears to be a kitchen, they get a special look at to make sure that it's not an accessory dwelling unit, to make sure that it meets the Gladstone Municipal Code. However, oftentimes the replacement of an existing stove or the replacement of a furnace, if they are replacing it, I don't often see it. I usually see it if it's part of a larger remodel.
If I may.
Yes, Commissioner Poole.
Yeah. Any gas piping at all, even if you're stubbing something off for the future, we did a lot of conversions from oil to gas or electric to gas, and we would plumb the home and possibly stub something off for a future appliance. All of that requires mechanical permits, whether you're starting from scratch or you're retrofitting. And obviously, if you're building or converting to an ADU, plumbing and mechanical permits are an absolute requirement, whether it rises to a planning level or not. Yeah, we can't have anybody just making things up, or you know what it's like. Next thing you know, we got problems. We've all seen that house.
Well, I brought it up because I know the city is having kind of a debriefing on the ice storm next week. And these issues that are more related to planning and permitting, I think, come a little bit under our purview. And it's helpful to have some of this information to know, because I from talking to neighbors, there are people who are saying, even though the environmentalists are kind of promoting more electricity and less natural gas, less fossil fuels in homes, a lot of people are saying, gee, I wish I had more gas appliances in my home that I could operate during an electrical outage. But it's important that people just don't jump into that without following the kind of rules and regulations that Commissioner Poole and Planner Fields have described for us. And I think the same with the trees. We don't have those rules in place and regulations, but there are a lot of arborists who are going to be pretty busy for the next several months, I think.
Yes.
on these issues and people trying to be preventive. And maybe we need to do some proactive thinking about that too. There certainly are benefits to having trees, and we've seen occasionally that they can be a cause of a problem as well. Do other commissioners have experiences to share or concerns that came up regarding the ice storm that might be helpful to hear?
I have a question, Chair Milch.
Yes.
Your comments about trees. I made a remark to her, actually a friend made a remark to me that he was pretty sure that Portland General Electric would be stepping up their budget for tree maintenance in the wake of what has happened. But I'm wondering about if the mayor happens to be involved tonight, about any regulations involving people, citizens with their own trees, keeping them so they don't put the city in harm's way. I'm not necessarily suggesting that we do that, but I think it's a discussion point, or could be a discussion point.
I know watching some conversations on social media, sometimes there was, a disagreement just who is responsible. Should Pacific Gas and Electric keep track? Portland General Electric, sorry, former Californian, I make that mistake that a lot of people do. Should Portland General Electric keep track of every wire that goes through every tree? I watched them string up some wires in our neighborhood at the end of our power outage, and it had to, go through a lot of trees, and that's a lot of stuff to keep track of. And some people say, well, maybe the homeowner is supposed to do that. So that's another issue where we need that clarification. Mayor, do you want to weigh in on this? Commissioner Smith, address that to you.
We've definitely been having conversations about it. And the tricky part is whether it's in the right of way or not, because if it's in the right of way, then it's not the homeowner's responsibility, unless of course it's a sidewalk and it needs to be repaired. Then suddenly it is the homeowner's responsibility. But as far as the trees go, yeah, we don't want the homeowners, if it's wrapped around power lines or in the right of way, it's really better if the city or PGE takes care of it. You don't want to be climbing that tree and cutting things up.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be doing the work yourself. And even some certified arborists won't do the work unless they have the approval of PGE to do it, especially when you get in touch with the highest power lines that go through there.
It's PGE's responsibility. That's their lines, their poles. They choose to put them in the right of way, so it's their responsibility. Excuse me. My dogs are going crazy. Sorry.
So, well, thank you. That's helpful. I know that, the city is encouraging citizens to participate in this meeting next week to do the debriefing. I'll be interested to know, how our right-of-way fees are going to help in restoring the condition of our right-of-ways where poles were knocked over or replaced or temporarily replaced and maybe not yet finally replaced. But it was a big experience to share. And I think the city, the job they did opening up Meldrum Bar for disposal of debris was one of the best things they could have done. Not to mention all the things that private individuals did to help make sure that people had food and were kept in touch with do that. So I think the city did a good job, but I just hope that in their efforts to avoid this kind of situation in the future, people will follow the appropriate rules and regulations regarding their appliances.
And if I may say, I had in my neighborhood, I had an appreciation for not having telephone poles. Our work is underground and that, there might be many upsides to that, but I felt a little safer walking around during and after this ice storm for sure.
Yes.
Once they start coming down, you sure notice how many there are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They become very much more visible in this kind of a crisis situation. All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to interject that item into our agenda. And again, I encourage you to look for that meeting on the 23rd. Natalie, were you raising your hand or you're muted, Natalie? There.
I was just going to say, I would encourage citizens to, if they have, large trees like myself, over 100 feet tall, that you need to have an arborist come examine them and determine if they're healthy. If not, you need to prune them and or have them cut down. I do see where it is a homeowner's responsibility. And I just encouraged all of my neighbors after this storm to have their large trees checked out if they were lucky enough not to have them fall down. I had some little twigs and limbs, but no heavy branches. I was very lucky.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. Before we moved in, I had an arborist come trim up our trees, and the only tree limbs I got were my neighbors.
Well, I mentioned we have family in Oregon City. They had 2 trees in their parkway and that dropped limbs, and one of them did some damage to their roof. And the permitting process they have over there involves a form that they filled out, and they had a certified arborist who made a statement. I'll try to read it from my phone because I had my daughter send it over to me so I could see. But it says, 2 street side sweet gums have considerable structural damage from snow and ice. Corrective pruning would require removal of additional portions of the crown that would likely have negative repercussions on the health of both trees. Removal is suggested at this time. So it's kind of an evaluative role that an arborist can play in maybe making exceptions to limitations on tree removal in this kind of circumstance. And so that's what's going on, in Oregon City. And I imagine there may be other people in a similar situation. I see a lot of the trees that were that went in our neighborhood about 70 years ago. People are removing them now because of disease. And of course, that's another reason why a tree might appropriately be removed. But it's, this is Oregon. We're tree people. We like them, but we're mad at them a little bit right now. Okay. Any more discussion on this issue?
I think it's at least worth mentioning the expense of tree removal too. And a lot of folks, especially the neighbors helping neighbors. I'm not sure if that ties into it all. I'm sure there are a heck of a lot of folks out there who might have a massive tree in their yard. It's their responsibility, but the cost can be significant to have it removed or taken care of.
Exactly. If you have it professionally, removed or even pruned, it does get pricey. And just removing the branches was a lot for a lot of people, the branches that had fallen. All right, I asked Tammy Bannock tonight to include in our agenda tonight, this was before I knew we were going to have land use training scheduled. This is and the next item in your agenda, starting on page 3.1, 3-1, is an excerpt from a DLCD document, an introductory guide to land use planning for small cities and counties in Oregon, which was published in 2007. It's a real good resource. Andrew and any others who haven't read it yet, you can find it online, and it gives you a good introduction to planning. But this particular chapter is the one that talks about the types of public hearings that that planning commissions generally hear that's the main part of our job. I looked back at the minutes of 2019, and in that year, the Planning Commission met, they had 10 scheduled meetings. There was one meeting when they did not have a quorum, so they really met 9 times. And over the course of those 9 meetings, they had 9 quasi-judicial land use hearings. And there were 3 other meetings where there was a discussion of a legislative matter having to do with extending the deadline for applications. And ultimately, the actual legislation was drafted by the city attorney with the help from the planning department, and that went on to the city council. When we got to 2020, perhaps because of the pandemic and other things that slowed some building, we actually only had a total of 4 quasi-judicial land use hearings during that year, including 2 of them at one meeting. But we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we had at least 6 or 7 meetings where the focus was on legislative matters, and a total of 5 legislative matters that we actually passed and sent on to city council for their approval and adoption. So the focus of our meetings changed quite a bit last year. And this year, I hope we'll have a healthy balance of both, and I hope that we will be prepared to do both. But I just wanted to say both types of hearings involve the public, we'd like the public to be involved, whether we're considering changing the rules or, which is a legislative matter, or applying the rules to a particular piece of property, which is where we get into the quasi-judicial matter. One of the responsibilities we have is on quasi-judicial land use hearings is to act, it's analogous to being the judge or the jury really in a courtroom setting. We're dealing with the land use of one particular piece of property, and we have to hear that evidence and make a decision. And it's best that we hear the same evidence and have the same experience guiding that decision. That's why there are rules about ex parte communication, about not talking about the matter with your neighbors or your friends or your family, and just making a decision based on the evidence we hear as a commission. On the other hand, legislative hearings are something where participation of the public and getting a lot of background is sort of encouraged, so that we're sure that we're making decisions that are in the best interest of the community as a whole. And this is why I don't ask about ex parte communications with a legislative matter, but we do want to be sure that as with any matter, we act without bias, without self-interest. And so I've asked, so this matter is included here for you to read through and come to a better understanding of the difference between the two. For quasi-judicial hearings, there's a script that we use to go through the process to be sure that every element of the public hearing is followed to the T, so that it can't be appealed on procedural grounds. It's a little bit looser with legislative matters. Sometimes we discuss them informally. And then when we finally get a presentation, generally from the planning department or the city staff, then we have a hearing to review it and to make a recommendation to the city council. Are there questions from planning commissioners or comments about the difference between these two? And all right. All right, the next item on the regular agenda. One of the legislative matters that we acted on last year, right at the beginning of the year, was to make a couple of changes in the Gladstone Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units. Some of these changes, well, I think both changes came out of legislation that was passed at the state level. And the next report that appears on section 4-1 is something that I don't think we had seen in any of our packets before. But this is a document that gives cities guidance on how to implement some of the legislative changes that came out of the state legislature regarding accessory dwelling unit requirements. Joy, you sent me an email a couple of weeks ago about some of these rules and regarding how many ADUs a city can, a piece of property can have. Whether it's the same for a single family home or a duplex. And there was some uncertainty there for a while about which applied. Could you clarify that for us? How does that work? If there's a duplex, can they have 2 ADUs? Is it up to the city to make that decision in their policies?
It is my understanding that the city currently allows for 1 ADU per single family residence. Talking with staff at DLCD, I thought that House Bill 2001 may change that. However, looking at the rules and model code for House Bill 2001, it appears that cities still have to allow at least 1 ADU per single family residence, but they have the ability to limit it to 2 dwellings per lot of record. And that is based on the model code for model cities. And the reason, or for medium cities, I apologize. The reason I looked at medium cities is Gladstone is considered a large city in House Bill 2001 because Gladstone has more than 1,000 residents and is inside the Portland metro urban growth boundary. So the regulations for House Bill 2001 that Gladstone has to follow are those for large cities. Large cities have to allow for a duplex on, at least a duplex on every lot that is zoned for residential use. Because of that, House Bill 2001, the rules that were written by the Department of Land and Conservation Development send you back to the medium city guidance related to duplexes. And so it's this weird, Gladstone is a large city, but the regulations relating to duplexes
We lost your audio. Can anyone else hear Joy?
No.
Oh, okay. Right
No.
after you said the regulations related to duplexes, we lost your audio.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. I don't know. Oh. I have
Yeah.
unstable internet, apparently.
Okay.
So I apologize. So it appears that Gladstone doesn't have to allow more than 2 homes on a lot. So if you have a duplex, it doesn't appear that you have to allow an ADU. However, if the goal is to increase the amount of housing available and the economic opportunities for the residents and homeowners of Gladstone, you have the option of allowing 1 detached ADU, no matter how many dwelling units there are in the primary structure. So if there's a home that has a basement that is a second living situation, you could still have an ADU on the property and you would have 3 dwelling units. But that is up to Gladstone to determine if that's how they want to go. And that was the guidance from LCDC that was provided looking at Senate Bill 1051 and House Bill 2001 that was included in your packet. They recommended looking into whether it would be appropriate for a jurisdiction to allow for more than 2 dwelling units per lot. But each case is different, and I think the state understands that. So currently, Gladstone allows 1 ADU. And so a home that converts their basement already has an ADU and would not be allowed or permitted to build a detached ADU. Currently, Gladstone has limitations on where duplexes are allowed outright. They are allowed outright if they're on a minor arterial road. With House Bill 2001, a duplex would be allowed on all of the residentially zoned properties, even if the road is not a minor arterial. The
Now,
difference, yes.
Joy, let me ask, House Bill 2001 changed these rules and mandated cities of a certain size or in the metropolitan Portland region to follow new rules about duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes. And we have not yet updated our code. That's one of the things that we'll be doing. In fact, if I forget, don't let me forget, I need to get a volunteer from this group to work with a committee to help select a contractor to do that code modification. If you get a submission from someone who wants to build a duplex in say the R5 zone where they're currently prohibited under Gladstone code, do you have to comply with the state regulation and allow it? You don't at this point. Okay.
Not until July 1 of 2022.
Okay. So we have time then to do this code modification and to complete the citizen or the community engagement process to give us some guidance on whether, for example, on the ADU unit, whether we want to be one of those cities that would allow 2 ADU units on the same lot or limit it to 1. And that's part of what the citizens who are involved in that, or the community that's involved in that, will help decide. Okay, I interrupted you on the, you were talking about duplexes only on the major arterials.
Oh, I was going to share the difference between a duplex and an ADU.
Okay.
Is size. From a planning perspective, because an ADU can be part of the primary dwelling, if it is on a minor arterial and the zoning allows a duplex, then the conversion of the basement can be any size because it would be classified as a duplex. They would have to have SDC fees paid with Public Works. They would have to meet all the building requirements. But currently, under the Gladstone Code, if a house wants to convert their basement and they're not on a minor arterial, like Dartmouth Street, then the area converted for living space in the basement cannot exceed 400 square feet.
That's one of the limitations in our code. If
Currently.
you look at the other document that I included that starts on page 4-8, that was a code audit that Metro did, or an organization related to Metro did a couple of years ago, that compared all the ADU requirements in different cities. And those of you who were on the Planning Commission last year will recall that there's a chart in there showing the minimum or the maximum size in square footage for ADUs, and Gladstone is alone with a maximum size of 400 square feet when most cities have 800 square feet. That appears on page 4-27. And the document that we got from DLCD talks about size limitations as one of those things that may discourage people from building accessory dwelling units. And if we want to encourage them, then they're recommending changing to an 800 to 900 square foot maximum, or something related to a percentage of the size of the dwelling unit.
Joy, could I get some clarification? Because I'm a little confused. We're 10,000 citizens, not 1,000. Were you meaning to say 10,000, or of how we're figured out to be a large city or a medium city?
Because Gladstone has more than 1,000 residents.
Right, we have 10,000. Okay.
You have 10,000. Because you have more than 1,000 and are located inside the Portland Metro urban growth boundary.
Okay.
You are considered a large city for all of House Bill 2001 requirements.
Okay.
It doesn't seem that really we're inside the UGB and almost the size of the city is superfluous for the sake of what we're doing here.
The difference between a medium city and a large city is large cities have to allow for quadplexes, triplexes, and cottage clusters in areas. Medium cities have to allow duplexes on every residentially zoned lot. And so large cities have that extra little middle housing type that they have to allow.
a quick clarification. We could get way in the weeds and be here all night, so try not to. If someone has done a conversion and they end up with a duplex, or it's some kind of a grandfathered residence, that's one thing. But if you want to build a new duplex in Gladstone, don't you have to have a garage for each residence? See what I'm saying? You know, if you were building it, there's a brand new one, for example, right over in Oakfield that faces the Adventist Center. And typically, again, we're getting in the weeds a little bit. If you're building a new duplex, don't you have to have a garage for each side, or do you know the answer to that? Because you can't build a house without a garage, or so. Anyway, if you don't have an answer, don't worry about it. But
No, Les, I think it's an important question, but because we passed legislation early last year that eliminated some of the off-street parking requirements for ADUs. That's one of the things that came out in Senate or in House Bill 2001. So that's why it's important that we understand this distinction between a house with an ADU and a duplex. A house with an ADU would not be required to have a garage for the ADU, but a duplex under our current code would have to have that kind of a garage currently under our current code. Now, when we get to drafting the model code for the duplex, triplex, fourplex rules, we'll have to look at what's recommended there. I don't know what the off-street parking requirements are associated with that, and whether that will require some modification of Gladstone's code. Joy, do you happen to know?
Will you repeat the question, please?
When we get to
Chair Milch, could you speak up a little bit louder?
I will. I'll speak a little closer to the microphone.
Thank you.
When it's time to adopt the model amendments, if that's the way we choose to go, for to institute the duplex, triplex, fourplex rules that come under House Bill 2001, are there associated recommendations regarding off-street parking connected to those, or would we be having garage requirements for at least one car for each of those kinds of units as well?
I am not sure. I have not delved into the parking requirements for triplexes, quadplexes, and cottage clusters.
Good answer. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know. That's better than, okay. All right. Well, that's something we'll have to look into to get a clear answer on that. I don't want there to be confusion because we reduced off-street parking for duplex, for ADUs, that same rule applies to duplexes. I believe that the last duplex situation that we approved last year, we had a land use hearing on a partition of a piece of property on the corner of Glen Echo and Portland Avenue, and there was we did have provisions for off-street parking related to that to provide the sufficient amount. You remember some of it was in a garage and some of it was on a parking space, a paved parking space in front of the garages. So right now under our current code, we are requiring that kind of off-street parking. Joy, you're shaking your head. Am I wrong about that?
Looking at the R7.2 section of the Gladstone Municipal Code, there are design features that have to be met for single family and two family dwellings, but they do not include a garage.
Oh, it's off-street parking, but not necessarily a garage. Is that the distinction we should make?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Well, since ADUs was one of the areas that we spent the most time on last year, I wanted you all to have all of these resources in a packet printed so that you, on your own time, you can look and see and familiarize yourself with what they are. Tammy Bannock has also included here the current Gladstone regulations and sample regulations from the city of Milwaukee and the city of West Lynn and Oregon City. And with that larger code audit that was done by Metro in 2018, you can get a pretty good comparison of how the different cities have it. Now, just because our neighbor cities do something one way doesn't mean we have to do it that way. But sometimes it's helpful to know what the rules are nearby so that we don't have glaring differences between how Gladstone does something and how another city does it. So I would recommend that you review those, that you get an understanding of them, that you see the differences in the way they're presented. Oregon City in particular has some really helpful interpretive material that shows something about the process of building and constructing an ADU and examples of what they might look like. That kind of information can be real helpful to a homeowner who wants to do this. The other issue that's really for the city council to decide, and this has come up in their discussion of housing, is whether system development charges should apply in the same way to accessory dwelling units as they do to other home situations. In some cities, they waive them altogether. In some cities, they give a reduction in system development charges. I've read things where people say perhaps system development charges, rather than having to be paid all at once, could be spread out over a period of years for certain kinds of home projects. So that's something the council will look at. Commissioner Mercero, did you have a comment on that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I saw your hand. All right.
May I ask, and being the new member, I might have some seemingly silly questions, but with these ADU units, how do we, what are the requirements for like, handicapped accessibility and things along those lines, or they're not? None.
I hear Joy and Tammy both right now shaking their heads. If you want to make it accessible, there are regulations to how steep a ramp has to be and that sort of thing, if that's part of what you're doing to get the accessibility. But apparently, from what Tammy and Joy are indicating, we don't have a requirement that they be accessible in that way any more than the general accessibility requirements of other buildings.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It occurred to me that, I wanted to ask, Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot. Andrew, are you still the chair of the Traffic Safety Commission, or have you not had a meeting yet to determine that?
We had, in 2021, we have not had a meeting yet.
Okay.
It seems like every time something weird's going on, but we start back up in April.
I'm going to call on you as I will consider you the current chair of that then, or the most recent chair of that. Tell us about the essential elements of transportation safety, the 3 E's.
Well, the education, enforcement, and engineering. Sure, yeah. Whenever we're looking at any changes or any issues with the transportation, as I'm sure everybody's to some extent aware of, that's kind of how we address it. Is it an engineering solution? With an engineering solution, maybe a reduction of speed limit, something like this. There's an education element that goes with it, so people are aware of whatever changes there may be. And of course, the enforcement is making sure that people are actually following those rules. So often when we are talking about certain changes or issues in the city, we're looking at it through that lens, the education, the engineering, and the enforcement, and how each part of that may have more of a role to play than the other in specific instances. We can look at things like Webster Road and the nature park there, and ways to deal with some perhaps pedestrian issues and accessibility to the parks there. Is it enforcement? Is it engineering? Is it education? Is it all of the above? So I guess in a general sense, that's what the 3 E's would mean.
All right. No, that's helpful. You know, it's a good reminder and a good device. Makes it easy to remember. And, you know, I know when people get off the freeway and come into Gladstone and maybe they get on Dartmouth Street, this big, nice, wide, straight street, and they start speeding up past the speed limit, which was why we see that device there so often, reminding people of what their speed is. Right. You know, and people say, well, we need to enforce the speed limit better, but you know, that's an example of kind of an engineering situation. Psychologically, we tend to think that big, straight, wide streets like that are safer to drive fast on, whereas nobody in their right mind would try to text while they're driving on Oatfield, for example, because it curves and there's a lot of traffic coming in and out. And, you know, when you get past the street that Les Poole lives on there, you've got to be paying attention to the road where you're going because it's just not safe. And so it's that combination that your committee has helped, you know, you want to educate people. You want to make sure that the design of our streets makes them safe. And you work with the police department on enforcement as well. I've been reading a book. I like to recommend books to planning commissioners. This is one that came out last September called The Affordable City. It's published by Island Press, which publishes a lot of planning related books. The author of this book talks about affordable housing, and instead of 3 E's, he has 3 S's. They are supply, stability, and subsidy. Housing prices are high because very often there's not sufficient supply of homes, which is why we've done a housing needs analysis that looked at how many houses we really, or how many houses we really need in Gladstone for the projected population. Stability is the issue where if we start to build new homes and people that were living in rental homes that thought they had a nice place to live, all of a sudden an owner sells that home out from under them, their living situation is not stable any longer, and that can affect their affordability. And finally, subsidy. Last year, one of the land use hearings that this committee had was to approve the Clackamas County Housing Authority to purchase a building in Gladstone and convert it to low-income housing for people. The rents on those units will, in some sense, be subsidized because there will be people there who don't have the income to pay market-level rents. So in Gladstone, we will have a combination of all these 3 principles at work in our affordable housing program as we move forward. So I remind you of supply, which we'll be addressing through adding duplex, triplex, and fourplex and ADUs, and looking at some of our rules regarding multifamily housing. Stability, sometimes at the statewide level, that has to do with renter protections and tenant protections. And that's not an issue we deal with directly, but that's one aspect of it. And then subsidy, we want to be sure that the publicly financed and supported and subsidized housing projects that we have in our city still do a good job and get the support that they need and meet all the standards that we have for good quality housing in our community. So I commend that book to you, The Affordable City by Shane Phillips.
Now, may I ask a question?
Yes.
And again, well, when, for example, the apartment building on Webster that went up, how does it work when we determine parking for that type of building? Because it's my understanding they had to purchase that new property because basically there wasn't enough parking in the end. And they kind of said it was a bit of a fluke.
A certain number of spaces. First of all, it had a density requirement that determined the number of units that they could have on that size land. Once they determined the number of units, then they had to have 1.5 parking spaces per unit, I believe was the requirement. And that determined the number of parking spaces that they could have. So when they constructed it originally, they met the requirement for the number of units and they met the requirement for the number of parking spaces.
Is this something that we're going to look into as maybe new buildings come in, increasing that parking requirement so we don't run into this type of situation? Or
There is no, they could have built more.
sure,
They were not
Right.
prohibited from building more when they were initially constructed.
interesting.
But based on the site,
Mhm.
because they had to meet the density requirements, it was my understanding they only had room to meet the minimum parking.
I see. Okay.
I think they did one more than the minimum, basically.
Yes, if I could,
Yes.
multifamily housing in the region has a density requirement from Metro.
Yes.
And that's what's at play here, because Metro tends to sometimes be a little too much one size fits all.
Mhm.
And that has come into play elsewhere. So obviously, if the density requires a certain number of units be built, well, maybe you go up, but no matter what you do, you sacrifice trees or parking or something. So
Yep.
it's something that we're going to have to deal with and maybe talk to Metro about someday. But that was a very odd situation and a unique piece of property. And then with that zoning there, the parking came out the way it did.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
So, and then the decision we made last year was to allow them to purchase a piece of land. We changed the zoning so that it could be used only as accessory parking to the other building. And it allowed them to add, what happened was a lot of those people that lived there had more cars than the developer and the owner anticipated. There were two adults living together, each going to work separately in a car rather than a couple with one car, which was their experience in other places. So, you can put numbers in a code and prescribe a certain formula for it. But as Les says, every community is a little different, and a one size fits all approach doesn't always work for the reality. And in this case, people seeking affordable housing close to the Portland metro area found that these apartments were a good place if they doubled up. And so you had people sharing cars and having multiple vehicles and not enough parking spaces. And that's how it worked out. There may be at some time people will be building property closer to bus lines, and there will be people who would like the option to get an apartment and not have to pay for parking, not have it included. And that may be the direction we'll go in other parts of the city. But it's not as Commissioner Poole says, it's not necessarily a one size fits all approach to everywhere. Commissioner Smith, did you, okay.
No.
The light came on around you. You must have coughed or something. So, all right. As usual, I've talked way too much because I get into that kind of teaching mode, and I want us to kind of get on the same page as far as some of these ADU issues. As Planner Fields indicated, next month we will have a land use matter to look at. This is the one going back to the parking, the design for the parking at the apartments, or is it the housing facility?
It is a variance
Oh, okay.
to setbacks.
All right. So good. We'll start with something pretty easy. It won't be as complicated as some. It'll be a good way to work into this year. I don't know what the blend of land use decisions to legislative decisions will be in 2021. Hopefully we've got a lot of that housing legislation behind us, but there are code changes that will be drafted. And that brings me to the last piece of business. The city is putting out requests for proposals, I think is the term, for people that can help us draft new code to meet some of these requirements, and also to update other shortcomings that may exist in our municipal code related to development. The Mayor Stemple and the chair of the Planning Commission, which is now again is me, will be serving on that committee. And Jackie Betts has asked that we have one more member of the Planning Commission and one more city councilor participate in that selection committee. So I will ask for volunteers. are there members of the Planning Commission who would be interested in being part of that process of helping to select the group that will be doing the rewrite of our code?
I would be inclined to volunteer.
All right, Les, you are interested. Are there other commissioners interested in that?
I would be interested too.
Good.
All right. How would you like to proceed on making a selection? We have 2 volunteers. Commissioner Langston, you were voted in as the vice chair tonight. Should we give preference to the vice chair to play this role? How do commissioners feel?
That seems reasonable. They're both qualified, both good, smart, attentive guys. Can't make a bad choice.
Yeah. You know, and also too, I would defer to Les if that was something he was interested. I know he's pretty versed in matters like that. So, you know, I don't know. I didn't know if it was a matter of the more the merrier, or we're just gonna grab one and send them out there. So, you know, if if the committee could use my help, I'm more than happy to help. Otherwise, I know Les would do a great job too. So.
Well, I tell you what, I think this is what I'd like to do. I would like to tell Jackie that it might be better to have 5 people on a committee than 4, so that we won't have a tie. And then I'm going to submit both names and ask her if that's okay. And if she says she would just like one, then Commissioner Langston, I will accept your deferral to Les, who spoke up first, and it will just be Les. But otherwise, perhaps the 3 of us can do that as a team, along with the city councilor representative and the mayor. Not that we want to outvote them, but I think the more people involved in hearing these kinds of presentations and helping to make a decision, the better it is. Sometimes each of us hear something different, and based on our own experience or knowledge, bring something to a decision-making process. So I will do it in that way. I'll suggest both names if that's okay with Jackie. Mayor Stemple, do you want to weigh in on this? Does that sound okay to you?
No, I think that sounds fine. The more people really gets involved, I agree that we'll all pull something different out of those presentations and the documents. So no, I think it's perfect.
All right, good. And it's kind of strange, you know, the city council did adopt the community engagement plan that we developed to look at housing needs. I don't know that the community is going to be engaged in making a lot of decisions on what code changes are made or how that process will work, what will go first. But I'm sure the city has a plan to work it all together. So we want to make use of that community engagement, because that's what the task force really emphasized. But we want competent professional people doing the code changes so that we have a good, readable, usable code. Joy, one more question for you. I've not heard the term clear and objective standards talked about too much lately, but I know that when some of this legislation went through the state a few years ago, there was a real move to get more of that in cities' codes, so that decisions don't have to come to a body like this one, but they can be made at the administrative level by staff. Is that still something that is a part of some of this legislation and some of these prospective code changes?
Clear and objective standards are a requirement.
Okay.
So Senate Bill 1051 requires clear and objective standards related to any housing. So.
All right. So, and what that means is, you know, we know clear and objective when it comes to numbers and quantifiable things. You know, a 10-foot setback is 10 feet. And if it's only 8 feet, it doesn't meet it. If it's 12 feet, it does. But saying that something has to be similar to something else, or, you know, in a compatible style, those are very subjective kind of things. And makes our work very difficult as a committee when we have to try to come to some agreement on those kind of things. So I'm glad to see that as a direction that, you know, will simplify everybody's job. All right, let me move around for business from the commissioners. If you have other issues or things you'd like to bring before us tonight, I will start at the far left end of the dais from me. That would be Commissioner Pat Smith. Commissioner Smith.
I'd like to make one more comment about the storm, the ice storm. We talked about a lot of people that pitched in and helped. And I can't quantify this, but it seemed to me that Public Works was out and doing an outstanding job. They were seemingly they were everywhere, doing everything, and they should get a pat on the back.
I agree. I noticed there were tree limbs broken on some trees that were on city property, and I know that they were putting them off in order to focus their attention on the needs of the community at large. And I think that was a great way for them to put their efforts in. It was the thing the citizens needed the most, rather than trying to work out a trip to the dump and all the expense of that. So I'll second that. Thank you. Commissioner Mercero.
I would only like to agree with Commissioner Pat Smith that the Public Works did a super job in assistance to people, especially across the street from me, where a large limb came down. They had to come cut it up.
Commissioner Poole.
A couple of quick things. One is that our new commissioner brought up parking, and he's invited to go look at the archives of recent meetings. Transportation and parking and how we accommodate different modes is a real big issue, because regardless of any mandates from the legislature, it's pretty clear that the supply of land and the situation we're in is going to bring more and more density. And we've got some issues that I don't need to describe because you're on traffic safety. So that whole transportation piece is real big in the area, and it's intertwined with how we develop. The other thing I wanted to mention is that although we're not in it yet, I'm very pleased that the new Civic Center was completed. And I've mentioned this before. As a former heating and cooling contractor, I can't imagine us ever meeting the COVID requirements in the old City Hall. So I say that tongue in cheek, but the building has got a lot of the qualities that we need for a safe and comfortable place to do business. And even though we're not utilizing it completely, having that entry foyer and the way it's set up has helped us get through COVID. So I'm looking forward to the time we can all meet together and I quit looking like I've got some kind of weird lighting on me. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Labonte.
No, I guess just one quick question. As we're looking to, we've got to increase our population essentially, or dwelling units. And I'm sure there's been conversation, but if you can just kind of enlighten me a bit regarding Route 99, are we contemplating mixed use, residential, commercial on 99, or are there some issues that make that unlikely or not favorable?
I saw an article online about car dealerships in California whose land was so valuable, and they generally had one single level showrooms for their places, and some of them were beginning to put apartments above the car dealership. So it was kind of a mixed use thing with a showroom on the ground floor and apartments above, because the land was so valuable. Now, I don't know if we're that place yet on McLaughlin, but there was there is a community plan going on to look at the McLaughlin corridor far to the north, closer to the trolley, the Max station up in Milwaukee area. But I've always thought, when we talk about downtown Gladstone or commercial district downtown or Gladstone, we focus a lot on Portland Avenue. But 82nd Drive and McLaughlin are also commercial areas, and some of the same concepts of mixed use development could potentially work there too, particularly because McLaughlin is so close to the bus routes that lead directly into either Oregon City or Portland. So we've not done a lot with that. We haven't focused as much on that as we have on Portland Avenue. But a lot of the zoning there is similar to what we have in other commercial parts of the city.
And to your point regarding the you know, accessible bus lines and things to that nature, you know, 99 may be favorable in some ways for some folks.
I think they're looking at those kinds of some housing like that up in the area near the Max station. Not down here so far, but you know, again, we look out at a 20-year or 40-year you know, horizon, and so that may be something that we'll look at.
Otherwise, I absolutely agree with the Department of Public Works doing a great job. I was actually surprised at how quickly so many of these branches have been scooped up. I thought that it would linger on a heck of a lot longer. So absolutely kudos to the Public Works for sure. Thank you. And I'm excited to work with all of you and to learn from you all. And I'm open to criticism and ideas and all of that. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Criticize you? Oh, this is going to be fun.
Transportation safety, of course, is something the city has always been concerned about, but the Planning Commission looks at the broader issue of transportation, and we have a transportation master plan. And so someone with your background and interest in this, that's a good addition to our group. So we're glad to have you on board. Commissioner Natalie Smith.
I don't have anything to add this evening other than to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow.
Right.
Thank you. Tomorrow's the day we're all Irish, I guess.
Yeah.
Commissioner Langston.
Nothing. I just agree with Les. Can't wait to check out the new Civic Center, and I'm happy to have Mr. Labonte and Tom Mercero on, and look forward to the upcoming year.
All right. Mayor Stemple, do you have any parting shots for us?
Oh no, parting shots? That's dangerous.
Parting comments.
Parting comments. Hopefully we'll all be into the Civic Center soon. We're definitely talking about opening it up this summer. And just thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I'm thanking you in advance for all of the hard work that's coming, because you guys are going to have a very full plate with all of the zoning changes, codes, ordinances, everything else. So
and we will pass that plate right along to you once we finish it. So
yeah, put on your seatbelts, guys.
Thank you for your calming presence in those videos each week and keeping the public informed about things. I follow your communications on COVID and other issues, and we had a lot of crises to respond to this past year, and you were always there as a, you know, kind of a unifying presence to the citizens, and we appreciate that.
Well, I'm sure ready for no more crises. So
yes.
Knock on wood, everybody. Everybody, please.
Planner Fields, thank you for your participation tonight, for helping us. You will return to your usual role next month, I think. Tammy Bannock, thank you for your staff support and helping us through. I will entertain a motion for adjournment of the meeting.
Oh, moved.
I second that.
Oh, good. Somebody seconded. I thought we were going to be here all night for lack of a second. All right. Commissioner Pat Smith has moved. Natalie Smith has seconded that we adjourn the meeting at 8:14 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing no opposition, the meeting is adjourned at 8:14. Thank you all for coming tonight. We'll see you next month.